Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Big game breakdown. Ohio State, Indiana in Ohio Stadium, Saturday at noon. Bill, you and I would both be there. And for the first half hour of the show, we're going to break down this matchup on both sides of the ball. We then will welcome in Zach Osterman, the Indiana writer for the Indianapolis Star, who will help us add even more context to this for the Hoosiers. Then we'll come back and make our picks for this game, and then we'll do what you watching, what you eating, what you thinking at the end. I should have known this, but I just came across this, Bill, and I think this is a very descriptive way to explain this Ohio State-Indiana game. This is the first regular season top 5 matchup in Indiana history. And it is the third regular season top 5 matchup for Ohio State this year. And that kind of tells you what you need to know about where these two teams are coming from.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in those stark of terms. But yes, this is it was interesting, like being around Ohio State even on Tuesday. It feels like a big game, right? But maybe the energy for that wasn't as ratcheted up as it would be otherwise, because this is the third time Ohio State has done it this year. Whereas I'm sure in Bloomington, people are like, how are we supposed to approach this? kind of thing, because it's unfamiliar territory.
And it's the first home game for Ohio State because the other two are at Oregon and at Penn State. So the Buckeyes get they've done exactly what Indiana is doing already twice this year. And it's just going to be a situation, Bill, where there are so many veteran players on this Ohio State team. We're going to really try to dig into the football here, right? But we have to do so with the context of most of the guys on this Ohio State team, the coaches, they've all been here before. This is kind of what they're accustomed to. And this is a huge game for them, but they've played some banger Michigan games the last couple of years. And a bunch of these guys played in the playoff against Georgia 2 years ago. And there is nobody on the Indiana sideline or team who really has been through this. Now, what they have been through is unbelievable winning, unbelievable success. And Kurt Cignetti was talking this week that, like, they're not lacking for confidence, right? But it is the circumstance. And then you have to decide what that means. So the facts are the facts. So does that mean that, like, Indiana's going to be like, this is our moment and we're going to play the greatest game any of us have ever played because we're going to seize the moment? And Ohio State's maybe not going to be quite as up because they're used to this? Or does it mean in the spotlight, Ohio State handles it, Indiana gets a little nervous? I don't know. But it's not confidence that anybody's worried about with Indiana. It's just they haven't been quite in a spot like this.
I just think, like, the energy in the stadium can feel different for a game like this. It's not something that Indiana is used to feeling. Ohio State is, and it's not to say that Ohio State takes it for granted or won't be up for this game, because Ohio State needs to keep winning to go to the Big Ten championship, which it very much wants to do. Right there are. Yeah. It's not like it's a mid-season top 5 game where if you lose, you can still kind of like progress forward with your team goals and stuff. Ohio State very much wants to get back to Indianapolis, so it needs to win this game to do that. So the stakes, I think, will have Ohio State locked in, but not in unfamiliar territory. Whereas for Indiana, there are plenty of stakes too, like, Big Ten championship and perhaps playoff implications as well, depending on the way that the game goes for them in terms of scoring margin. So I think it could have an effect on Indiana. Just like, the James Madison players are one thing, and there's a large chunk of them on this roster who are accustomed to winning and played in some big games at that program, certainly, but that's not the entire roster. And I could see it being a factor if the game is tight in the balance in like the second half and the stadium's really rocking and it just feels like a lot's on the line. Ohio State has been in that position a lot before, and Indiana has not. This is I think in the last 3 years, this is the 6th top 5 game that Ohio State's played in, 6th or 7th. So they've been here before.
And I do think, though, on the other side of that, Ohio Stadium can get very on edge very quickly in a big game if Ohio State gets down. So if Indiana comes in and is machine-like from the jump, then I do think that could be very, very real right away. Before we get into the football, just again, looking for context here a little bit, I think you and I have settled on a little bit that this Indiana team maybe would remind people a little bit of the best of the Mark D'Antonio Michigan State teams between 2010 and 2015. I think Michigan State won at least 11 games in 5 of 6 seasons, and they were 3-2 against Ohio State in that stretch. You also could compare this Indiana team to the 2021 Mel Tucker Michigan State team that came into Ohio Stadium in this exact spot. That was a Ohio State number 5, Michigan State number 7 matchup. Mel Tucker was on the verge of getting a gigantic contract, which Curt Cignetti just got. Michigan State had started that year 8-0, and Ohio State dropped 49 points on Michigan State in the first half and won 56-7 and kind of blew Michigan State off the field. So I think we understand what type of program that is, that Michigan State in all those years, and that Michigan State team was very transfer heavy, right? Kenneth Walker III and all those things. There are real similarities kind of in roster building between 2021 Michigan State and 2024 Indiana. But we think the D'Antonio teams are maybe a little bit more of a comparison, because I don't think it's going to be 56-7.
I don't think it's going to be 56-7. So I would lean more toward the D'Antonio well-coached, play hard. Those D'Antonio teams probably had more talent than this Indiana team does, but I think it's more similar to that than it is. I think of two instances when I think of Ohio State in like surprising top 10 matchups. So I think of the 2021 Michigan State game where they hammered Michigan State, and I think of 2016 when Nebraska was number 10 and came to Ohio Stadium for a night game, and it was like, okay, here we go. This is interesting. I think Ohio State was 6th and Nebraska was 10, and Ohio State won that game 62-3. So we've seen both sides of this, I think, for the Buckeyes.
Well, that's not both sides, though. You just cited 2 blowout examples.
No, I mean, like, we've seen both sides in the sense of, like, I guess it's more about the opponent than it is Ohio State. But we've seen this game go two drastically different ways for Ohio State. When a like perceived overmatched team with a nice number next to its name comes to Ohio Stadium. I definitely think Indiana is more like the good D'Antonio teams than the like flash in the pan Mel Tucker team or that Nebraska team.
Okay, like the 2013 Big Ten championship game Michigan State team, like the 2015 Michigan State team that came in and beat Ohio State in Ohio Stadium, those kind of things. So, and these just like, I just have continued to be amazed by how similar and machine-like these teams are offensively. So I just want to talk about that a little bit before we get to the both sides of the ball conversation. Again, this is our big game breakdown. Thursday, we're going to do every other Northern game, and we won't have any game that is quite as much of a big game breakdown as this top 5 matchup, but we will have like the Big 12 bangers that really matter, Penn State, Minnesota, all of that on Thursday. This is basically an Ohio State, Indiana show because it is a top 5 matchup in the North in the second to last game of the regular season, and it has huge playoff implications for both teams. So we want to give this what it deserves. This comparison here, Indiana is number 2 in the country in points per game. They are scoring 43.9 points per game. Ohio State is number 12 at 37.8 points per game. Yards per game is basically the same. Indiana 453, Ohio State 451. Success rate, which is how good you are play to play, Indiana is number 2 in the country. Ohio State is number 3. And then the Brian Fremeau rankings that we had Brian on a couple weeks ago, this is drive to drive rankings, how good you are and how consistent you are. Indiana's number 2 and Ohio State's number 3. So play to play, drive to drive. These are the number 2 and number 3 offenses in the country, Bill. Then a couple of the things that really matter. Third down percentage. Indiana is 9th in the country in third down conversion rate, which is a big deal. Ohio State's 37th. Red zone touchdown rate, which is cashing in when it really matters. Ohio State's the best in the country. Indiana's number 4. So they are like, again, if either of these teams hold each other to a field goal in the red zone, that is going to be a huge deal, I think, in this game. Keep your eyes on that. And then plays of 20 yards or more offensively, Indiana is number 26. Ohio State is number 45. So they can be explosive. They are more about efficiency, but then also, by the way, defensively, neither of these defenses really give up many big plays. So I do think, Bill, it is going to be a story in this game of offensive efficiency and who can throw the wrench into the other team's offensive efficiency the most. That, to me, is what this is.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And I guess both of these teams, so like Ohio State has faced a high-powered offense against Oregon, did not go very well for Ohio State in that game defensively, and Indiana has faced a at times fairly overwhelming defense in Michigan, and that did not go very well for Indiana's offense in that game either. So we kind of have a couple of data points on how these teams have fared in similar situations before. And I do think that's what this game comes down to. It's can Ohio State slow down Indiana? Can Indiana do anything to slow down Ohio State?
Yeah. All right. So let's start with the Indiana offense versus the Ohio State defense first. We, of course, also know that Ohio State suffered a major injury in practice this week where Seth McLaughlin, their starting center, is out for the season with a torn Achilles. They're going to have to do some shuffling on the offensive line, but Indiana just had an injury on the offensive line, and Tyler Stevens made his first start of the year last week at left guard. Mm-hmm. So Ohio State lost left tackle Josh Simmons. In the Oregon game, Indiana lost its presumptive right guard in the preseason. So we are going to go into this game, Bill, with both teams down two of their presumptive top five on the offensive line, which is not that unusual at this point in the season. And I mean, that we'll get to that. But again, it's another way these teams are the same. But anyway, Indiana offense, Ohio State defense, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple different places you could start. I guess I would just start with how efficient Curtis Work has been this year, the Indiana quarterback. Yeah, number one in the country in EPA per dropback, number 2 in the country in passing efficiency. Will Howard's like right there with them, and we'll talk about Will when we go to the other side of the ball. So this is, if at least from like a statistical standpoint, I think you could argue that this is maybe the best quarterback matchup of the season. It's like either this one or it's Will Howard against Dylan Gabriel, right? Like I don't really know. Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, people might want to throw at you, but no thanks. I'm good with that.
Anything with Jackson Dart? Do we have to Jackson Dart this conversation up?
Jackson Dart is
Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah, Jackson Dart is number 1 in the country in passing efficiency, for what it's worth.
What? Now you ruined it.
I'm sorry.
Jackson Dart to make a joke, and you're like, actually, he's very efficient.
Yeah,
okay.
He is very efficient. But so are these two quarterbacks, and we're talking about Curtis Work, the transfer from Ohio. It has been remarkable to me how similar he and Will Howard are, just in terms of one, how they play, but mostly like how they carry themselves, how they lead the offense, how I think they've put both of these offenses in position to be as efficient as they have been. Now, Indiana doesn't have the receiver star power that Ohio State has, but it has very good receivers. I think if you take the depth into account, because Indiana, I think, has 4 guys who should concern you. I don't know that I make the argument that it's the best receiver group that Ohio State has seen, because the ceiling for Oregon, I think, is higher than the ceiling for Indiana, but the depth for Indiana might be better than the depth for Oregon, and the 4 guys there for the Hoosiers are pretty good. So I think on this side of the ball, it probably comes down to Ohio State's secondary against these Indiana receivers. And the last time that we saw Ohio State's secondary in a matchup of note was that Oregon game, and Oregon threw for 341 yards against Ohio State. Denzel Burke really struggled in coverage for Ohio State. 8 targets, 8 receptions, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns allowed in coverage. Receivers were getting behind Ohio State's defensive backs. Ohio State was giving up explosive plays. It tackled fine. Ohio State wasn't burned on the perimeter throws that really get loosened down the field. Oregon was just kind of throwing it over their heads a couple of times. And Curtis Work is very capable of doing that. He's one of the better downfield passers in the country this year. These receivers have been very good, I think, in all situations, but especially down the field, and especially Elijah Surratt, who's the number 1 receiver for Indiana. So I think you could have a very simple conversation about this game that is Ohio State has a lot more depth and a lot more talent than Indiana has. And I think that's probably true, but I'm not sure how true it is in this matchup specifically between Indiana's receivers and Ohio State's defensive backs, given how the two groups have played this year. So I do think Ohio State's DBs, corners specifically, need to play their best game of the year here, or else risk having something similar happen to them what happened against Oregon.
So Ohio State plays a top 5 game against Oregon. Evan Stewart for Oregon has one of his best games of the season. These issues pop up. That was really the first time that it popped up with real questions about the Ohio State cornerbacks. I think I certainly thought that Ohio State had among the best secondaries, maybe the best secondary in the country coming into the season. Mm-hmm. So it happens against Oregon. Then Ohio State does go play another top 5 matchup at Penn State, but Penn State doesn't have receivers like this. And that's just not what Penn State's going to do. So this is, and then it's been Northwestern and Purdue. Bryce Kurtz is good at Northwestern, but this is the first since the Oregon game, which was the alarm going off about the Ohio State corners. Now this is the next real test of this, and we don't know, right? Like you don't know, but the Ohio State corners have to play better. They can't get beaten down the field. They can't be handsy and get too many pass interference calls. Like they must play better, but there is certainly not a guarantee that that's going to happen.
No, I guess I would say that there hasn't been anything that's happened since the Oregon game. I think they would like tell you that they're definitely going to be better. I think they certainly could be.
Absolutely could. They still are talented. Yeah.
The two things that worry you, I think, if you're looking at it from the Ohio State perspective, are like Denzel Burke. I think just has to find a way to be more competitive in some contested situations and make some more plays on the ball. And then Davis Igbinosun in the opposite corner has an issue with penalties and defensive pass interference, and that's a bit of a tricky one because what makes Davis Igbinosun good is his length and how physical he is, and Ohio State loves that about him. And honestly, sometimes defensive interference or defensive holding could be a little bit of a coin flip call, and sometimes you just end up on the wrong side of it. But Davis Igbinosun has found himself on the wrong side of it probably a little too often the last few games. At the same time, he made an incredible interception being physical against Penn State, stealing a touchdown away in that game. So I don't know that you tell Davison to do anything different than he's done thus far. Maybe grab a little less, but you still want him to be physical because I think you have to be with Indiana's receivers. And then the same thing goes for Denzel Burke. I'm curious how Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, might approach this because he seemed fairly comfortable kind of leaving his corners on islands against Oregon and got burned for it. And I wonder if he will tweak that approach now, maybe play a little bit more of a shell, keep the safeties back a little bit more than he was doing in that game. I don't know that would be a terrible approach. It might be a situation where, you're never content with the team moving the ball down the field, but Ohio State's defense has been awesome in the red zone. It has multiple goal line stands this year. Number one red zone defense touchdown percentage wise in the country. Do you almost like let it get to the red zone and take your swing there because you're really good in the red zone kind of thing if you're Ohio State's defense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Which is to say, beat them but don't break. Yeah.
But like both these teams, they're efficient, but again, the defenses don't give up a ton of big plays. I think that's probably. But it's hard, right? An explosive play could win this game. A single explosive play could win this game. So you don't want to be the team that gives that up. But when you play bend but don't break, there's some hope or anticipation that the offense is not going to break you. And when you have the two most efficient offenses in the country, then I also kind of think, well, they'd be like, okay, like you're just going to let us march down the field? Okay. We'll do that, and then we will break you eventually. So I'm very caught in between for both these defensive coordinators on how aggressive they need to be blitzing, on how much you might be willing to put guys on islands, or how much you should just try to keep stuff in front of you and like hope the other team makes a mistake. Like we talk a lot, like Iowa does that, right? Like there's a lot of teams that do that. It's like we anticipate that if we play bend, don't break, you will make a mistake before we do. Except these two offenses don't make mistakes. So now is there going to be a sack? Is there going to be a holding penalty? Is there going to be a drop that's going to all of a sudden get you behind the sticks and now you're ready to set up a punt? Because these two teams don't punt. They have among the fewest punts in the country. So like so we're talking about Indiana offense versus Ohio State defense. What should the Ohio State defense do? How aggressive should they be? Versus how much should they just bend but don't break?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could see an argument for either one. I guess I would say maybe be more aggressive. Curtis Work's been very good this year, and he's even good under pressure. But if you look at his efficiency ratings, like the worst games, and it's not surprising, are the ones where he has been pressured the most. And he was really pressured in the second half of that game against Michigan. I think it was like 20% pressure rate in the first half and almost 50% pressure rate in the second half. In the second half of that game, he was 3 for 10 for 16 yards and an interception. I would probably try to do that. Like, I don't know, because you're right. Like Indiana has been incredibly efficient. Like if you think like, oh, well, we'll spin the wheel in the red zone and see if we can't get a stop. Like they've been very good at that. Penn State is very good at that too. And Ohio State kept them out of the end zone on 3 red zone trips. Right. So you can do it against good offenses, but I do think it's more about getting after Curtis Rourke in this game, and there are probably ways to do it while still protecting yourself on the backside. If you do some more zone blitzes rather than man blitzes, which Ohio State was doing a lot of in the beginning of the year, and it does seem like they've mixed in some more zone blitzes here of late. I was going through it because sort of like just like watching it with my eye and kind of anecdotally, it has felt like Ohio State has blitzed a ton more since the Oregon game. That's not actually the case. There has been a slight uptick, but it's not like they went from 10% blitz rate to 60% blitz rate. It's been an incremental kind of increase, but nothing crazy.
Do you think more effective though?
Yeah, I think a little more effective. Like they didn't sack Dylan Gabriel, which was the biggest issue. Like they didn't really come maybe one play they almost got him. Otherwise, it didn't come close really to getting him down on the ground. They've been better about that since the Oregon game. But this will be the ultimate test of how much that's improved, because Indiana's offensive line has been one of the better pass protecting offensive lines in the country. But last time we saw that offensive line, they were going up against a pretty ferocious Michigan defensive front, and Michigan got after them. I thought Michigan's defense changed the line of scrimmage, especially in the second half of that game, in a way we've just not seen happen to Indiana prior to that this year. And then here comes Ohio State with plenty of defensive talent of its own. So it'll be interesting, right? Because Jim Knowles has been burned by aggression in big games before, and I think that stays in the back of his mind. But it does feel like Ohio State has made a philosophical shift since the Oregon game of blitzing a little more, twisting and stunting a little more, just trying to be a little more creative up front in an effort to get after the quarterback at a more consistent rate. So I don't know why that would stop in this game. I just think you need to be. You need to be a little more thoughtful about how you do it so that you're still protecting yourself on the back end.
What was the word that Nick Saban used about their defense? That it was it stagnant or antiquated? I think that hurt their feelings. I think it hurt their feelings. Like, okay, we'll try some other stuff. By the way, just real quick on Curtis Rourke, he is among the best deep ball passers in the country by PFF, the Power 4 quarterbacks, in just rating on passes of 20 yards or more down the field. He's 5th in the nation. Will Howard, by the way, for Ohio State is 2nd. And anything like on these 20 yards or more down the field, if you can complete like half, that's really good. There are 9 quarterbacks who have a 50% completion percentage or better in the Power 4 on throws like that. Curtis Rourke is 8th at 51.4. Will Howard is 9th at 50%. And they've both made a bunch of big time throws down the field. So like they don't do it a ton. How often they do it on either side is not a ton, right, Bill? But when they do decide to do it, they are both like pretty good at it. Just for example, your guy Garrett Nussmeier, your guy Jackson Dart, because you love the South, right? You love SEC. Is that what you said earlier in the show? You said, I love SEC quarterback matchups. This can't compare to anything in the SEC. There's no Jackson Dart in this game. And it made me sick when you said that. I can't believe you said it. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU has tried 69 passes of 20 yards or more this year. Jackson Dart has tried 63, right? Ohio State and Indiana, Curtis Rourke has only tried 37. Will Howard has only tried 30. So they're half as much, but they're better at it. So when they take the shot, they're pretty good. And again, that Michigan game where it was they got pushed more than any other game, but they get down 3-0. They have a really efficient drive and get a touchdown. Indiana does. And then their next drive, they're moving it and they take a shot to the end zone and it's perfect. It's a double move and it's literally like how you draw it up. Perfect route, perfect throw, perfect catch. And that's going to really matter because like 30 and 37 so far in 10 games, like they're going to try. Each of these teams is going to try about 3. And who can hit a shot is going to be a big deal. And again, which brings us back to why you're talking about this first off the bat, these Ohio State corners versus these Indiana receivers.
Yeah, and I also think like, Oregon took its shots, and I think that caught Ohio State off guard because that was Oregon breaking tendency a little bit from what it had done previously in the year.
Yeah.
I don't know that Ohio State would be caught off guard by Indiana taking shots in this game because Indiana, that's sort of been the way it's gone about its business all year. But I do think Indiana will be aggressive, right? It's interesting to have like the top 5 comparison of like playing against Oregon, which I thought was very aggressive against Ohio State, and playing against Penn State, which has historically been very conservative against Ohio State in big games. I think Indiana will lean much more toward the Oregon side of that spectrum and come to Ohio Stadium looking to throw some punches with its offense because it's not a Indiana's defense is good, and we'll talk about it. I don't know that Indiana comes in thinking, "Go, our method to win here is for our defense to shut down Ohio State's offense." I think they believe they have to come in and go blow for blow with Ohio State's offense.
Isn't it hard though when you're efficient to decide to take the shot? Because it's like, well, if we just keep doing what we're doing, I think we'll march down the field and we'll be okay. I think that's going to be incredibly important in this game. When Chip Kelly, the Ohio State offensive coordinator, and Mike Shanahan, the Indiana offensive coordinator, like decide to take their shot. Because if you do it on first down and it's just off the guy's fingertips, now all of a sudden it's 2nd and 10, you're behind. And that's not what you have to do.
I just think like it's really hard in games like this to drive the ball down the field methodically and finish drives. That's why coaches are obsessed with explosive plays and matchups.
They are.
So both teams are going to try to take their shots.
And we showed like the success rate stuff off the top, and these teams are as good as it as anybody. The success rate gives you the chance to win. And then explosive plays, turnovers, red zone touchdown rate, that's what makes you win. So again, success rate. Do your job offense. Do your job offense. I think the success rate by play, only Army is better, and the drive rate, the FEI ranks, I think only Miami is better. So that's why they're not first and second. The do your jobness of these offenses, I think, will be something to behold, Bill. I think it's going to be beautiful. And again, I just like, this is one of those, I don't want to tell people how to watch this game, but watch it in a dark room by yourself. This is not a party game. Because every punt, if you force a punt, that's going to be huge. If somebody gets a holding penalty on 2nd down, that's going to be huge. If somebody forces a pressure and makes a quarterback throw it out of bounds, that's going to be huge. Like individual little plays like that are going to stand out, because otherwise I think what both these offenses are going to be doing is getting 5, 7, 4, 6, 11, 8, 6, 5. And that's going to be happening constantly. Maybe not quickly. And you cited like these times aren't going to, like they're methodical. They're not slow, but they're certainly not fast, right? But it's clockwork. It's like a metronome. So if you are going to watch with friends, all right, what you're allowed to watch with friends? No more than 4 though. No more than 4. Like my daughter got her license, right? When you're young, it's like for a whole year, you can't drive more than one person. You know why? Because you're supposed to pay attention. So this is a pay attention game, Bill, is it not? Watch this game. But if you're with friends and you're eating,
who's not watching a game?
Because it's not for fun. It's ball. It's just not for fun. This is not a sword waving game. I'm not bringing my swords to Ohio Stadium. You're locked in. But if you are with friends in between nacho bites, if somebody gets a holding on 2nd down, turn to your friend and say, that's huge. That's going to throw them. Now that they're behind. Right? If somebody takes a deep shot and barely misses, that's huge. A punt's going to feel like a turnover. I just want to make sure people don't have too much fun watching this top 5 banger of Northern football. I want to make sure it feels like homework. I got to watch the Ohio State Indiana game. Doug was yelling at everybody. God, I'm a loser. Way to take the fun out of it. But in the SEC, they're just like, we'll just chuck it around like a bunch of maniacs and throw picks and brag about schedule strength that's fake. Maybe those guys have something, right? They don't care. They don't do homework in the SEC. This is football homework. It's ball time. But don't you think? I think there's a lot of strategy to choosing when to take your shots, because otherwise you want to stay on it. Like I think it's really interesting.
No, I mean, being on schedule is a huge component of that, right? You take your shots at 2nd and 2, so that if you don't get it, you can still convert 3rd and 2, right?
Yeah,
that's. So that'll be the key. I think like for
both
these,
I'm so excited for this game.
Both these defenses, like first downs are going to be like, if you can keep them from gaining more than 3 yards on first down, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, right? So and I wonder, Indiana's pretty balanced. Both these offenses are very balanced. Indiana's been balanced run pass, and even like balanced within their run scheme and the type of runs they call. I don't know. I'm wondering how well Indiana will be able to run the ball against Ohio State, and if it struggles a little bit and then finds itself off schedule, is that the recipe for disrupting the efficiency of what Indiana's done thus far?
You want to talk a little bit quickly, because we're going to talk about on the Ohio State side of the ball, the offensive line injury for Indiana. They've been playing the same 5 guys all year. And then Drew Evans got hurt. Tyler Stevens made his first start for Indiana against Michigan in their last game. As people know, Indiana's coming off a bye. He'd been a starter at JMU, but this is part of what you have to do. And otherwise, again, they lost Nick Kidwell in the preseason, but they've been having the same 5 guys out there until this injury.
Yeah, it's not a team. Like, it's hard for any team, I think, to endure like an injury to an offensive line starter. I think we perhaps take that for granted sometimes. Yeah. But it's especially difficult for a team like Indiana that has like remade its roster the way it has. So Tyler Stevens played against Michigan, and I don't think he played very well. Kurt Cignetti said he thought he held his own fine. I thought watching the game, it was a weak spot for Indiana. If you look at like the PFF stuff, Tyler Stevens was one of the worst power conference linemen who played that week. Gave up a couple of pressures against Michigan's good defensive interior, had a poor run blocking grade, and I think Ohio State's defensive tackles have an opportunity to maybe be pretty disruptive here against that spot. I like the rest of Indiana's offensive line. The center is great. Mike Kadick is great. The tackles have been really good. The right guard spot's been good, but I don't know. I think there's an athleticism advantage, for Ohio State's defensive line against Indiana's offensive line anyway. And now you're working in a backup left guard, which could be a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Let's flip it to the other side of the ball. Ohio State offense versus Indiana defense. And we'll start with the injury that just happened this week in practice, unfortunately, for Seth McLaughlin, the great center who transferred from Alabama, had really been the glue of the Ohio State offensive line. I think you could have an argument that he could be Ohio State's offensive MVP, just in the way that he sort of held everything together. Obviously, Ohio State had already lost left tackle Josh Simmons for the year. So now, again, they're down 2 of their preferred top 5, just like Indiana is. But we anticipate, Bill, that Carson Hinsman, who was Ohio State's starting center last year, has been playing left guard the past couple weeks after the Josh Simmons injury caused Donovan Jackson, the left guard, to bump out the left tackle. We now think Hinsman would slide to center, and probably Austin Sareveld, who started the first 2 games of the year at left guard when Donovan Jackson was out with an injury. They have a chance to replace this glue guy with 2 guys who have started at the position at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. It's a huge loss because how good Seth McLaughlin has been. But it does feel like to me that Ohio State is more prepared to handle this than they were initially to handle the Josh Simmons injury at left tackle.
I think that's true, right? You said it, a guy who started 12 games at center who should just slide over and now be your new starting center. I think that's what Ohio State will do. The other option is to play a redshirt freshman who's barely played and hasn't started ever. I don't think Ohio State will do that. I think it'll err on the side of experience, including at left guard, where Austin Sareveld has at least a little bit of experience. So having experience is like guarantees you nothing. I'm not trying to say like it's fine. But I do think the pathway to solve it is at least a little more clear than it was when Josh Simmons went down. So I think that has to mean something.
Yeah. Okay. Mikhail Kamara is as disruptive as any edge guy in the country, and he is going to be disruptive in this game. He has 53 pressures, according to PFF, which leads the country. He has 9.5 sacks. That's tied for 7th in the nation. He has 14.5 tackles for loss. I talked a lot about Derek Harmon going into the Ohio State-Oregon game, who I thought was the most disruptive defensive tackle, interior guy in the country, and he was huge in the Ohio State-Oregon game. And I'm very curious if Mikhail Kamara is going to be that kind of guy here. But he also might be the kind of edge guy that Ohio State's a little more able to deal with. When Donovan Jackson made his first start at left tackle bumping out from guard, he had to deal with Abdul Carter. And there were a couple plays in that Ohio State-Penn State game where Abdul Carter just beat him off the edge. And it was sort of like, well, he's not a natural tackle. He's not used to sliding out like this. Like, I don't know what to tell you. He's doing his best. Kamara's not that type of edge guy, but man, is he good with his hand. Man, is he productive. And he's absolutely going to disrupt a decent amount of the time what Ohio State's trying to do.
Yeah, I think he will. I want to ask, when we have Zach Osterman on here in a little bit, I want to ask him, as someone who's watched Mikhail Kamara all year very closely, what makes him kind of tick, because he does not have the physical profile of a dominant edge rusher. He's 6'1", 265. But he plays incredibly hard, has a really high motor, I think is pretty skilled, and Indiana does a good job of finding ways to free him up by disguising its front, disguising its pressures. So he's a real weapon for them. He's the most productive pass rusher, edge guy that Ohio State has faced this year. Is he the most physically talented? No, I wouldn't say that, but he gets the job done. So it's a big matchup for either Donovan Jackson or Josh Fryer, whoever ends up having to block him.
Yeah. Other matchups that really matter here, D'Angelo Pons and Jameer Johnson at corner have played pretty well. Johnson was ejected for targeting right at the end of the first half in the Michigan game, so he had to sit out that second half, but he'll be back for this game. Like, it's one of those things for Indiana. If he had been ejected on the first series of the third quarter, he'd be out for the first half of this game, right? So, like, this is like, so he's back. That's a big deal. Pons has been really good. 2 picks against Washington. They've played some pretty good receivers. They haven't played anybody quite like the Ohio State receivers, but they did a good job against Denzel Boston and Washington in that game. Nick Marsh, the freshman at Michigan State, 5 catches for 78 and a touchdown, was pretty good against them. They did a good job, though, against Colston Loveland. Only 4 catches on 10 targets in the Michigan game for 37 yards. Thomas Fedone, the Nebraska tight end, had a decent game against them, 6 for 91. Bryce Kirch for Northwestern actually had 10 catches for 128. Ty Felton, they did a good job holding down against Maryland. Only 2 catches in the first half for 7 yards, and he got hurt on the first drive of the third quarter. So this is a good secondary, Bill, but also Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are kind of like a different thing to try to deal with.
Yeah, it's like they did a good job against all those guys individually. Now put all those guys on this field at the same time and then make them like 10 times better, right? So this is a much different challenge. Like I think Indiana secondary has been very good this year, all things considered. And even like D'Angelo Pons has been especially impressive because he's a little guy, he's 5'9", but he competes his butt off. That'll be a fun matchup between he and Jeremiah Smith, their high school teammates from down in Florida. So that'll be fun to watch them go back and forth. I always look to like Emeka Egbuka when Ohio State's in big games and how teams try to cover him. Ohio State likes to go to him in big games. I have the stat: 6 top 5 game for Emeka Egbuka, 42 receptions, 476 yards, and he scored in all of them. So he shows up in these moments, and I wonder about a lot of secondaries is like, okay, you might have a guy or 2 in the outside, but do you have 3 who can cover all of what Ohio State has to offer?
Plays from scrimmage of 40 yards or more allowed by a defense. Ohio State's defense has allowed 2 this year. That's tied for first in the country. Indiana's defense has allowed 3. That's third. So again, they don't let you get big plays, which gets us back to the clockwork efficiency of these 2 offenses, I think, is absolutely going to be the key to this. Big deal for Ohio State is how good they've been in the red zone. They lead the nation in red zone touchdown percentage, which is the only stat that matters. Like, scoring doesn't matter, because if you hold a team to a field goal in the red zone, that's a success for the defense. The offense doesn't get credit for that, for scoring. Ohio State scored touchdowns on 87% of their red zone trips, 33 of 38. So that red zone TD rate is great for Ohio State. Indiana defensively has allowed red zone touchdowns 55% of the time, 12 touchdowns on 22 trips. So that is 37th in the nation. So they're okay at that. Like, they're not like the best at it, but like they're in the top 40. Like, that's going to be, again, there's just going to be I don't know, Bill. Do I just have to cite 4,000 stats to say that like key downs are going to matter? They're going to move the ball. Red zone conversion is going to matter. They're going to move the ball. Converting on third down is going to matter. I don't think there's going to be a bunch of huge plays. And just individually, the minor little things that pop up in this game are going to be a huge deal. Who can throw off the other team's efficiency? Because in every metric, red zone, third down, fourth down, play to play, drive to drive, these offenses move the ball. And Ohio State's offense is absolutely going to do that, right? There's no doubt about that. So Indiana defensively, you have to win like 6 plays in the game, and you have a chance to win the game if you can win 6 plays on third down and in the red zone when it matters.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about that. The one thing that has been on my mind as I ponder this game is Indiana has the number 1 rushing defense in the country. But I've said this when we've talked about Washington, how Washington had the number 1 pass defense in the country, but it didn't play any teams that value the forward pass until it played Indiana. Indiana has not played a good rushing attack this year. Like, not even close to it, really. And Ohio State has not, at least like production wise, come close to matching what I thought they were going to do, which was leading the Power 5 in rushing. But it's been a good rushing team. Chip Kelly has had a good plan. Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson have played very well. The last time, like, Ohio State played an elite rushing defense on the road against Penn State and ran for 176 yards. So I think it's on the table for Ohio State to perhaps just run it and keep running it against Indiana.
Good backers, though. Like, I'm actually super excited for that matchup. Could you just
small
see
defensive line, though? Small defensive line.
CJ West is kind of a bowling ball in the middle, though, isn't he?
He's the only one. Yeah, he's
Okay.
the only one.
So you're gonna see Mikhail Kamara like disrupting stuff off the edge, and CJ West is kind of a load in the middle, right? James Carpenter's pretty good, so they have some guys, but like you just watch, they play 5 DBs, and Jalen Walker and Aiden Fisher are just standing there in the middle of the defense waiting for things to happen. And they're super smart and they're super experienced and they work really well together and they run to the ball. So there's going to be a lot of running to the ball, chasing down Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. And if they can tackle, if Fisher and Walker can tackle before they really get like 8-10 yards down the field, that's going to be a huge thing. Aiden Fisher tied for second in the Big Ten in tackles per game at 9.8. Jalen Walker, 5.9 tackles per game. There's just a lot of this, Bill. Like, I mean, you're right about all this stuff, right? But I think almost anything you bring up, sometimes you find matchups in games, right? Mm-hmm. But especially like with the players on both sides, almost anything you bring up, it's like, well, these guys do this. It's like, yeah, but then these guys have this. Like, there's a lot of answers and interesting matchups on both sides of the ball that I'm super interested in. Depth of talent, depth of experience on both sides of the ball. We've said it a lot all year. Ohio State is a veteran team that brought back a lot of guys. Their 2 best players are a true freshman and a true sophomore. On offense, it's Jeremiah Smith, the receiver. On defense, it's Caleb Downs, the sophomore at safety. Mm-hmm. Indiana doesn't have any guys quite like that. And so I wouldn't say it's even. Ohio State just has better recruiting. We get it. But Indiana has 18 of their top 30 guys in the transfer portal, right? Like, we understand they've built this team with a bunch of JMU guys and the best of what Indiana had been, and some Old Dominion guys and Curtis Rourke from Ohio. We understand all of that. Justice Ellison from Wake Forest. We get it. But Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs are freaks. And then there's a part of me that's like this almost even in every other way. But on each side of the ball, Ohio State has a dude that it's hard for almost any team to match.
Yeah. No, it could be. It's like a simplistic way of looking at it, but I think it could be that. There are certainly there are matchups in this game that I think favor Indiana. And it would start with their receivers against Ohio State's DBs, I would say, given how both those units have played this year. And I think you would have to at least pay some respect to what Indiana has in its front seven, given what Ohio State's going through with the injuries on its offensive line. I think I would still take Ohio State's offensive line because I feel actually pretty good about the answers they'll have to make up for the loss of Seth McLaughlin. But that'll be a real battle. And if we were watching a game on Saturday and it's like, oh boy, Indiana's defensive line really showed up ready to play and Ohio State's having a hard time, like, I won't be shocked by that. So I think it's a pretty competitive matchup. It's just like if the Ohio State dudes show up, and there's a reasonably good chance they do, then I don't know that Indiana can quite match that.
Yeah, because they have a chance to because that's beyond efficiency. That's exceptional on top of efficiency. But give me like Aiden Fisher tackling Quinshon Judkins or trying to like 10 times. I'll watch that all day. Just do like Oklahoma drill or whatever. Like, that's just like all day, stuff like that.
It's not like I went to the IU Michigan game, and like, I guess Indiana is not like a super physically impressive football team. Like, they're good, they play hard, they're well coached, they're technically sound, they're experienced. There's a lot of guys there who won. But there are times where like you see a team like trot out of the tunnel that has to go play Ohio State, and you're just like, Ohio State is way bigger than this team. So like that might show up in this game too. I want to be respectful of what Indiana is and what it has done and how good I think it is, while also acknowledging, the reality of some of the physical attributes on this roster and how much it might favor Ohio State.
And the hard thing about this is, I mean, I could not have more respect for the do your jobness of Indiana's entire program, which is, I don't know that there's a higher compliment that you could give a team, that everybody does their job. Your point is right, but you also watch this team on both sides of the ball. It's like, 11 guys all did their job on that play constantly. Right. The issue is that Ohio State is also pretty much like that. That this is not one of those, like, it's a do your job team versus a high flying goofball, more talented, but they screw up kind of team. They're not playing Miami, right? Like, this is, so it's like 2 do your job teams, but then Ohio State just has a talent edge. So like, I think that's just factual. And there's like, it doesn't mean Indiana can't win, but it's just, I'm really interested in how similar these teams are on both sides of the ball. All right. Zach Osterman has been waiting patiently. There's nobody we'd rather talk to about the Indiana Hoosiers, and we will do that next on Kings of the North. Back on Kings of the North, Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. We're getting Zach Osterman ready in here. There's like real context to this game, Bill. Like we sort of started off with that of this is kind of the norm for Ohio State, and it's not for Indiana. But there's like a real cool aspect to that. Like I'm excited that Indiana fans get to experience something like this.
Yeah, well, the whole season's been like that, right? Like again, I'm not someone who's around that program regularly. I've been to Bloomington for a couple of games, and they've been Ohio State games, but I felt that energy when IU was getting ready to play Michigan, and it didn't have the same stakes as this one, right? Michigan season hasn't gone that way, but it still meant something to be playing for something as Indiana while Michigan came to town, and like beating them kept you on track for something you've never accomplished before. And now here is Indiana in a similar situation against a team that it has historically struggled against in a similar fashion to Michigan, but with much more on the table, right? I can't imagine like the energy that fan base is feeling now with an opportunity to go play a game like this.
Yeah. It's funny. When I had Dan Wetzel on Tuesday, it was like Dan Wetzel started talking about how Indiana is America, right? And like that this is like, it's like the American dream practically of being a bunch of guys that maybe the power conferences didn't want, both players and coaches. And now here you are, you get your shot and you're doing this together. I said that, Curt Cignetti called Indiana the emerging superpower in the sport. And it was like, how could you get a hotter quote than that? And then Wetzel dropped Indiana is America on top of that. But do you think this is like sustainable, Bill? Because again, the thing here that's like the most dangerous thing of the 2021 Michigan State comparison is not that Michigan State came into Ohio Stadium and lost 56-7 against CJ Stroud. Like CJ Stroud does that to NFL opponents right now. Stuff happens. It's that then was not sustainable for Michigan State. That felt like kind of like a one-year thing with them getting their roster together for a year, and it didn't turn it. Now the Tucker stuff off the field complicates that. But do you think, and they are leaning hard on transfers right now, but do you think there's a chance that this is a one-year thing for Indiana? Or do you think like, yes, they are going to be this now. They are going to be the D'Antonio Michigan State that's going to be in contention in the Big Ten more often than not?
Yeah, there's always a chance, right? That it's more of a one-year thing. That'll be the challenge for Curt Cignetti and his staff as they move forward here. It'll help them that they've shown themselves to have a winning pedigree, like not only at Indiana, but like previously. They can sell that to people. They've been a team that's competed for championships at lower levels, and now is just doing it at this level with Indiana. So that'll help. But it's just it's such a mixed bag when you're trying to build via the portal that it's not easy to encounter, or excuse me, it's not difficult to find yourself encountering some pitfalls where like you think you have a read on a guy and then you bring him into your program and he's not who you thought they were. And then all of a sudden you've done that 5 times in a 13-man class, and now your season kind of gets away from you. I guess the thing that I find encouraging about Indiana, and it'll sound like a backhanded compliment, and I don't mean it to be, I don't know that this staff prioritized talent first. I think it prioritized winning first. And then obviously you have to be a good player on top of that. So if that is the mode for Indiana moving forward, then I think it would have a better chance of sustaining this. Like, it's very easy, and it's what happened to Michigan State. You become good, you have access to different kind of talent, but then you bring in some people probably that aren't great for your program and it gets away from you. I would worry about that happening depending on what kind of doors get open for Indiana here moving forward.
Yeah. There's no guarantees in any of this stuff, but like believing in Curt Cignetti is not, does not feel like a dangerous thing to do. Right. So I don't think that the world is Indiana certainly is not believing in Curt Cignetti for 1 year. They're believing in Curt Cignetti for the long term. So we now have Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, and we'll ask Zach that. Do you think this is the beginning of something, Zach, or how much is there? Fear is not the right word, but like nobody in Indiana wants this to be a 1 year thing. Is this the beginning of something, though? Is this really an emerging superpower?
Well, I think, first of all, I wore the most SEC thing I could find for you, Doug, in my house. This is an Auburn baseball cap that belonged to my stepmother's father. Just to remind you, I am the SEC deep state here.
You can leave now.
Growing up in Atlanta. No, I think there's been a belief in Curt Cignetti basically since he was hired. And, the momentum for this season in terms of like fan interest and, if you want to track it with stuff like season ticket sales or NIL donations, like that stuff was picking up back in December and January, in terms of, basically people not just sort of excited that it was something new, but excited that of who it was, the way Curt Cignetti carried himself, obviously his history, his resume. And there's an extent, I wrote this when the extension was announced. There was an extent to which I think Indiana started kind of preparing financially to try and sign Curt Cignetti to an extension before he'd ever coached a game, because that was the level of belief internally in, like his process and his overall sort of approach to the job. I don't think anybody expected 10-0. I don't think anybody reasonably could have, but I don't, I don't think people around the program, close to the program, are looking around and saying, oh my God, how did this happen? There was a belief in Curt Cignetti pretty much from day one that obviously is being repaid here, probably fivefold, tenfold, however investments work. I'm not sure.
Okay. Just real quick, as we add context here, Zach, is this the biggest game in Indiana football history? I know your site in Indy Star had like a little interesting story about that today, sort of like running through other big games of the past.
Yeah, certainly in the regular season, the only two that might compare. In 45, they played Purdue to win their first Big Ten championship. In 67, they beat Purdue both times. In 67, they beat Purdue to go to the Rose Bowl. Certainly in like its modern history, this is the first time both teams have been ranked in the top 5 in any regular season game Indiana's ever played. So this a top 5 matchup has never happened in this program's history. And in the modern vintage, this is the biggest thing Indiana's faced.
Okay. What's the expectation from the fan base that you sense, Zach? Is it just like Indiana's playing with house money, let's go take our swing and see what happens? Or what's the level of confidence that Indiana can actually go to Columbus and win this game?
I think Indiana fans are eager to see what IU can do, and obviously like the first game that's going to test them at this level, and maybe the only game before wherever they go in the postseason is going to test them at this level. I think, if anything, I think the thing that's eating up a lot of the bandwidth right now is arguing with fans from 2 lost SEC programs about, where Indiana should be in the playoff picture if they lose the game. But I am like, one of the reasons I kind of find the game fascinating is it does feel a little bit like every conversation, at least on Indiana's side, and I think Ohio State's taking Indiana seriously, but on Indiana's side, it seems like every conversation starts with some version of the phrase, when Indiana loses on Saturday, what happens then?
Mhm.
And I just I that gives me pause because I thought this would be a good team. I picked them to win 8 games in the regular season before
Look at
the
you.
ball was kicked. I was, I don't think I was the only one that thought they at least could make some hay out of this season. Good coach, good staff.
We thought that. We thought,
schedule.
hey, we didn't think 8 wins, but we thought, hey, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, even that now looks, obviously incredibly modest. And so basically, this is kind of a tangent, but in 2013, Indiana went to the College World Series in baseball, and they played the Super Regional down at Florida State. And you talk to people that were on that trip, and Florida State people were like, "You've had a great season. It's such a shame it has to end." And then Kyle Schwarber hit a home run over this circus tent out in the right field, over the right field fence at I can't all of a sudden remember what Florida State's baseball stadium is called.
We don't care.
And it was like the oxygen got sucked out of the suite that they were sharing. And Florida State people were like, "Oh God, what are we going to do?" And I'm not necessarily saying that's going to happen Saturday, but I do feel a similar vibe of Indiana hasn't played a team like Ohio State, but every team Indiana has played, with the exception of Michigan, it has just kind of wiped off the map. And yet, like I said, from Indiana's perspective, it seems like these conversations are always starting with, when Indiana loses on Saturday, what happens then? And I'm just not sure I'm comfortable underestimating this team anymore, given what I've seen them do.
So we're going to play a new game here. You guys ready to play a game here on Kings of the North? This game is called Who's Your Schwarber? So who is the guy, Zach, that can do that? What Hoosier can come into Ohio Stadium and hit a home run over the circus tent? How does Indiana win this game?
I think it's on offense. It's probably Elijah Surratt. He's in single coverage, and I think this is the best secondary Indiana's seen all year. But I know that there are it has breakdowns at times, especially on the outside. That is kind of where Surratt lives. He had a couple drops against Michigan that, frankly, that game maybe goes a little bit differently if he doesn't drop the passes. Uncustomary mistakes from him. Defensively, it's Mikel Kamara. I can make a compelling argument he should be Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. And I recognize there's 2 games left, and I think Abdul Carter, Caleb Downs. I think there's some other players that are firmly in that conversation, but he has been borderline unplayable. He's going to be the first Indiana player in 16 years to break double digits in sacks, as long as he gets 1/2 sack sometime in the next 2 games. He's second in the Big Ten in tackles for loss. Indiana will move him inside. They'll move him outside. He runs a lot of 2-man game with CJ West. They've gotten really, really good at that the last few weeks. And he has yet to face an offensive line that could really slow him down. Now, again, it's Ohio State. The athletic level is different. Ohio State's obviously also had some injuries along the line, had to shuffle some things around. They're going to have to do it again. If there's somebody defensively that's going to be that difference maker, I suspect it's Kamara.
What do you make of the season that D'Angelo Pons has had, Zach? And what do you think of the matchup he might have a time or two against Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, Pons was a freshman All-American at JMU, and he was a spring ad. So they got Pons and West after spring practice. So both those guys maybe were a little bit, eased in a little bit more. Obviously, Pons had more familiarity because he was with the staff in Harrisonburg. He's not a big guy. That's kind of the one thing against him. And he plays bigger than he is. He hits hard. He's not afraid to tackle, but he does not necessarily have that sort of commanding size that just controls a one-on-one matchup like that. Until I was listening to you guys before I came on, I did not realize that they went to the same high school. I probably should have. That's probably a beat writer fail on my end. What I would say about Pons is he had the really good game against Washington. In general, you don't notice him much, and I think that's probably a credit to him as a corner. Teams try to throw it at Jameer Johnson a lot more, and Johnson's been good. Don't get me wrong, but Pons is kind of one of those corners where, Indiana's had some corners in the past that wind up leading the league in pass breakups or passes defended, and it's sort of that's good, but that also means teams keep testing you. They don't test Pons a lot, and he's probably the guy they trust in man coverage more than anybody else. And again, if you're talking about sort of who has to deal with that step up in athletic level and talent level this week individually, Pons is probably at or near the top of that list.
What is your biggest question for Indiana in this game, Zach? What is the biggest fear that oh man, if they don't handle this, they could be in real trouble. I know Bill certainly felt like, I think a lot of people did, that Michigan's defensive line was really kind of getting after him a little bit in the second half of that last game. Is that it, or is it something else?
That's probably it. And I mean, Michigan is obviously not having the season in general that anybody expected, but I think that defensive front might still be as good as any Indiana's faced. And what's hard to parse about that game, even going back and watching it afterward, is Indiana was doing really well. They were close to 250 yards of offense at halftime. They were up 14 points. You felt like it was just kind of taking on the pattern of a lot of the other games they'd played, in the last month or 6-7 weeks. And then they just kind of like Curtis Rourke threw a pick on the first play of the second half. They lost their rhythm and they never got it back. Is it one of those things where in the course of that game, they just couldn't self-correct, but with the bye week, they're easing another starter in along the line because they lost their left guard late in the Michigan week to an Achilles injury. They can get some of that cleaned up? Or is that reflective of, hey, maybe Indiana's finally running again into teams with both the talent level and the depth to just make life more difficult for them? Because that was the first time we really saw Indiana unable to keep Curtis Rourke kind of clean and upright and out of trouble. And you could see how it affected Rourke's timing, his rhythm. He's very much a rhythm passer, like most quarterbacks are. If Indiana can keep Rourke's pocket clean, I think Indiana can move the ball. I think one of the fascinating matchups to me is Ohio State's got one of the best red zone defenses. I think it's my perception in the country. Indiana's got as prolific of a red zone offense as any in the country. Like, if Indiana can move the ball when they get in those scoring zone situations, like who prevails there, I think has a lot to do with who wins this game. But the big thing for me, sort of first and foremost, is Indiana's got to keep Rourke clean, because this is a passing offense. Kurt Cignetti will say it. Like, he says, I used to run the ball a lot. I don't do that anymore. That's not what this offense is about. That's not where football's gone. It's hard for me to imagine Indiana winning a low-scoring game. If Indiana wins, I think both sides are going to need to score some points. The game's going to need to open up a little bit, and that's only going to happen on Indiana's side if they can keep Rourke in rhythm.
Ohio State has only allowed 7 touchdowns on 23 red zone trips this year, 30.4%, number 1 in the country in red zone TD rate defensively. He's Zach Osterman. Go read him at the Indy Star. Great coverage of everything the Hoosiers are doing, and we will see you in Ohio Stadium on Saturday, Zach.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, we will be back after this to wrap this up and do what you talking about, what you thinking about. I can't remember what it's called. All that next on KOTN. Doug and Bill back. We'll take a thumbs up. We'll take a subscription. We'll take you telling a friend about Kings of the North. We do see our numbers ticking up a little bit here as we get into this home stretch of the season, mostly because people love us, Bill. No, mostly because there's great Northern ball.
That's right.
Like the Northern ball, like for real, it's so good. And it made me it broke my heart just a little bit, because I didn't want to ask Zach about it because it's the last thing I want to talk about with him, because I'm sure he's talking about it constantly and we just want to talk ball. But that he's even saying that, hey, it's are people getting excited for this top 5 matchup, and the SEC playoff debate against Indiana is sucking all the air out of the room. It sucks.
I hate it. I hate that conversation. I hate Joey Galloway saying that Indiana shouldn't play Curtis Rourke in this game, which is the most asinine thing I've ever heard. People don't know how to talk about this team, and it's really frustrating.
No, they don't. No, I would. Yeah. On the Tuesday show, I said everything's good about this season except the talking.
Yeah.
People don't know how to talk about college football, and Indiana's the pivot point for this. We will get into that, some of that a little bit here. But first, we're going to make our picks. What did you make of Zach saying he thinks Indiana, if they're going to win, it has to be a game that opens up a little bit, that they're not exactly going to try to win a grinder against Ohio State? Are you intrigued by that take from him?
I think he's right. Yeah. I don't know that there's a game control, run the ball your way to a win path for Indiana here. I think if Indiana wins, it's because it's going to be hitting a bunch of explosive plays. So I think Indiana probably needs to be north of like 30, maybe even north of 35 if it's going to win this game. Yeah.
So you think it's going to be a bunch of, I mean, this is, again, the whole point of this is that neither of these defenses allow explosive plays. So you think this would have to be,
I mean, Ohio State has in big games.
Well, yeah. I mean, if Indiana wins, does it look a lot like the Oregon-Ohio State game to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Where it's like, okay, like both teams move the ball, but then also here's the 3 or 4 like really big plays that Oregon hit on you, and they're, steal a possession in there somewhere and maybe a key turnover, and Kamara makes a play and there's Surratt down the field, and all of a sudden Indiana's winning 34-31.
I think if it's a game where Indiana's just trying to move it, execute in the red zone, I like Ohio State's chances there. I think Indiana needs to go over Ohio State's defense, not through it.
Why is that? Because you think this Indiana, again, I've just been saying the same thing all year. You think they won't be able to be as efficient as they've been most of the year against this Ohio State defense. Is that why you're saying this?
Yeah, and I think when you're down in the red zone, it becomes a conversation about physicality and run game. And I don't know that I see like Indiana moving Ohio State off the ball in that way. And unless Indiana does something entirely different with Curtis working his legs and involves him more in the running game, I don't think that's a winning recipe for Indiana. Honestly, it wasn't for Oregon. Oregon didn't play well in the red zone against Ohio State. Oregon won because they hit a couple big plays, right? So I think you have to do that if you're Indiana and you want to win this game.
Okay. Red zone offense. Again, as we said, Ohio State's number 1 in touchdown percentage. Indiana's number 4. Indiana has 56 red zone trips and 46 touchdowns. That's so many red zone trips. Oh my God. Yeah. The only team that's been in the red zone more than Indiana is UNLV. That is so many red zone trips. I'm trying to make a good comparison. For example, Michigan has made 24 trips into the red zone this year. Indiana's made 56. But also part of that is if you're not scoring on explosive plays, like every time you score, you're in the red zone, right? So that's like part of it too. So if you and Zach are both setting up this scenario that this is what Indiana has to do to win, do you think they can do that? Like, do you think they have a chance with Curtis Work, with Elijah Surratt, and their other receivers that like they have a chance to be explosive?
Yeah, I do. If they can protect, right? It's Ohio State's defensive line has not yet had a game where it just sort of takes things over and just terrorizes a quarterback. And I thought that that's what happened to Indiana in the second half against Michigan. So if Indiana can avoid that scenario, then yes, I think it has the opportunity to hit big plays.
And the Michigan game to you pushed back against my constant naming of Indiana as an offensive machine. That it's like, yes, they're an offensive machine, but then they played a good defense and they weren't as much of a machine.
Yeah, they only got into the red zone twice in that game. So and scored once.
So do you think Indiana's offense will look like a machine against Ohio State or no?
No.
Okay. Why do you think they've looked like a machine so far? Just primarily because they are good, but they haven't played good defenses?
They haven't played good. Yeah, they haven't played good defenses. Yeah.
Okay.
I say like Nebraska's defense has been very hot and cold this year, and clearly, I think maybe got closer to cold against Indiana. But I thought like Indiana putting up the number that it put up on Nebraska is a little misleading because of how much Nebraska turned the ball over.
Yeah.
So but that was a good performance against a pretty solid defense, I think. But Michigan's defense is better, and I think Ohio State's defense is probably better than Michigan's. So, I just have a lot of questions about Indiana's ability to execute, not at all, but just to that level against Ohio State's defense. Like I'm not sitting here thinking Indiana's going to get shut out or not going to be able to do anything. I just think you're asking a lot out of Indiana if you expect it to be what it has been all year against this defense.
So the hard thing is that there's not a lot of margin for error with Indiana, right? When you don't have the depth necessarily of a team like Ohio State, and you don't quite have the top end Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs stuff. They have a lot in the top middle. They have a lot, right? So there's no cherry on top, and maybe there's not 6 scoops of ice cream in the sundae, but they have like 2 really good scoops and some nice whipped cream. So that is a nice sundae. It is delicious. For instance, they're plus 10 in turnover margin this year. That's tied for 12th in the country. Ohio State's plus 4 in turnover margin. So they move the ball. They don't make mistakes, right? They don't allow big plays. And they've been, until this offensive line injury, like really quite healthy on both sides of the ball. And they're extremely well coached. And they have a bunch of dudes who know Kurt Signetti and know how to come in and execute. And they've brought that culture. And then the Indiana guys who stuck around and everybody else, there's great connection on this team. But you can see how there's not as much margin for error. But like they've made no errors. Like they're almost error-free, right?
They made a bunch of errors against Maryland that didn't matter.
And we loved it, right? That actually, we had Mike Kadick on soon after that. And we were so excited when Curtis Rourke threw some picks against Maryland, because what happened in that game? And this is the point, but this is the point too. You felt like in the Michigan game that Michigan's defensive line was starting to take over and the Indiana offense kind of shut down. And then the Indiana defense stood up. And in that game, when they turned the ball over against Maryland, Maryland didn't score any points off those turnovers, right? Because the Indiana defense stood up. So I'm very intrigued by this defense that has been, as much as the offense for Indiana has been a machine, the defense, when it's needed, has stood up. And I'm super intrigued, again, for a defense that doesn't give up big plays, how much they can stand up against these 5-star guys from Ohio State.
Yeah, so am I. I think via pressure and some guys in the secondary who aren't going to be afraid of the challenge, I think maybe Indiana could make life a little difficult on Ohio State trying to drop back and throw it, if that's the approach that Ohio State takes to this game. I don't know that that'll be the case. I really do think Ohio State comes into this game with more of like a run script and tries to impose its kind of physicality on a defensive line that I do think is undersized. And even like, I like the defensive line. I love the linebackers. Big people move little people, right? And I think that is the approach that Ohio State will try to take here with this game.
Both teams kind of top middle in penalties, not overly penalized at all. Ohio State 40 penalty yards per game, Indiana 46.5 penalty yards per game. So again, like there's going to be, the little things are going to matter. So my shorthand for the game is the little things are going to matter, and your shorthand is big people move small people.
Yes.
Okay. Let's do our picks. What's your pick for this game, Bill Landis?
My pick is 28-17 Ohio State. So it's a cover for Indiana. I don't think Indiana is going to get steamrolled in this game. At least to the point where it gets like the score gets incredibly lopsided.
Yeah.
I do think Ohio State runs it. I do think it's a lower possession game. I think Indiana will have some success trying to attack Ohio State down the field, but not enough to sustain for the entire game. Ohio State's defense has given up some stuff in the first half this year. It's been awesome in the second half. Like, it is really good at making adjustments. I think that is a mark of a veteran defense, which Ohio State very much has. It's just like you can land some punches. Like, even teams that are far worse than Indiana have landed some punches on Ohio State in the first half of games. It's just that they go into the locker room, they come out in the second half, and you get nothing. So I think actually like the game might be decided like in the third quarter. Because Ohio State has a number 1 third quarter scoring defense in the country. They've not given up a touchdown in the third quarter this year. They just like really kind of put games away there.
There was a stat in, I think, on the TV broadcast for the last Ohio State game that like Ohio State's third quarter is like the most lopsided quarter for any team in the country in any quarter.
Yeah. They just kind of slam the door there, no matter what happens in the first half. So if Indiana can navigate that and get it to the fourth quarter where it is still like in the balance, then like I think all bets are off. Then we'll see. Like, Ohio State has had some issues closing out top 5 games in the fourth quarter. Did it against Penn State, didn't do it against Oregon. Hadn't really done it in any game prior to the Oregon game either, but it did it against Penn State. And Ohio State is really hoping that was a mark of progress moving forward, that they'll be able to do it if they encounter that situation again. We'll see. I'm not 100% confident that Indiana will get this game to that point.
Okay.
I think they'll hang a little bit, but I still have Ohio State winning by 2 scores.
Having watched a lot of Ohio State over the years, I feel like the two things that can happen when you think there's like going to be a competitive game with Ohio State is, one, it can be competitive early and then Ohio State just wears teams down. Mm-hmm. I don't expect this Indiana defense to get worn down. Like, just to sort of like,
you're not worried about the depth. You're not worried about they don't play a lot of guys. Because I am.
No, I mean, because I think that's more like, I don't know that they could withstand injuries, right? I mean, it's just been one of those things, right? I mean, it's like Ohio State played Penn State last year and Chop Robinson got hurt right away. And it's like, if something happens like that kind of thing, I think they're ready for this, and they're coming off a bye, which is not nothing. So like, I think that this is, we sort of talked about like Oregon by the end, 8 straight weeks in the Wisconsin game. Maybe we thought looked like a team that had played 8 straight weeks. Like, this is a great bye for Indiana, a great bye. So I think they'll be able to handle that. But I do think, and I think there's a lot. I'm not expecting it. I know they're not as deep and I know they're not as big, but I don't think they're going to get run over the way that Ohio State at times has run over people in the second half. And the other thing is, sometimes good quarterbacks come in against Ohio State and get rattled, and it's like, what happened to you? I don't think that's going to happen to Curtis Rourke. So I don't expect the quarterback to not be himself, and I don't expect the defense to get steamrolled in the second half, and I think it's a game. So I'll take Ohio State 31-21. And then the thing we have to talk about here, Bill, is like the playoff race either way. So let's just imagine a world where Indiana wins. So if Indiana wins, now we're looking at an Indiana-Oregon Big Ten title game, but Ohio State is firmly, I mean, I thought, people are, again, the talking is stupid, but Ohio State with the win over Penn State and 10 wins and a 1-point loss at Oregon, like 10-2 Ohio State, as long as it doesn't lose to Michigan, is firmly in the playoff as the 9 seed or something, right? I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No, I wouldn't doubt that. And I think even a 2-loss Ohio State team would stand a pretty good chance of hosting a home playoff game.
Okay. And then Indiana would go play Oregon, and that would be, again, if they both handle their business in the last week of the regular season, that's an undefeated matchup in the Big Ten title game, which means the loser's the 5 seed. So that's what would be on the table for Indiana. And like an Indiana Big Ten championship game in Indianapolis. Are you kidding me? Against a West Coast, like that would be, I can't even. And like that would be crazy. The number one thing that would be the craziest outcome to all of this is if we get an Indiana Notre Dame playoff game. Like, I can't, like, it's not necessarily what I'm rooting for, because I'd rather North-South matchups, but Indiana Notre Dame in the playoff would be crazy. But let's assume let's do it if Ohio State wins. We both pick like we picked an 11 and 10 point game. There's a lot of people having discussions about what if Indiana gets blown out. So if they lose close, their resume is Penn State's, because Penn State's best thing on its resume right now is a close loss to Ohio State. And actually, this would be a better loss for Indiana because it's on the road. Penn State's was at home. I think if the scores are what we said, I don't think there's any doubt that Indiana is in the playoff. Do you agree with that? That if it's a competitive game, 10 or 11 points, Indiana's absolutely in.
I want to wholly embrace that idea. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous about seeing BYU just take its first loss and drop 8 spots. Now, the difference is that Indiana has dominated every game it's been in, and BYU has played some weird games where people feel like it has been lucky to win. So I hope that would kind of be the reason that Indiana wouldn't see a similar fall if it were to lose this game. But I think they should be in. Let me state that. Like, definitely should be in if Indiana. I don't care what the margin is. If Indiana's 11-1, I think Indiana should be in. I guess I would lean to still be okay, even if they lose this game. But I'm not 100% certain of that.
I thought it was kind of a big deal that the committee has Notre Dame ahead of all the SEC teams as well. So it's Indiana 5, Notre Dame 6 before we get to this SEC logjam with Bama and Tennessee and 4 of the 5 spots between 7 and 11. The thing, I do think there's a difference in how it looks, because if the eye test is such that Indiana is not competitive, and then it would allow everybody to say, see, The only reason they were undefeated was their schedule. They could throw out all the other good things about Indiana because as soon as they played somebody good, they looked like the 70th best team in the country. So I think the way Indiana looks does matter. I am not necessarily looking forward to like fighting about this for 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
But I think if they look like a good competitive football team, I don't care what the SEC honks say. I think the committee will like it enough. I really do. Because again, I think the Penn State model is pretty good. Like they've liked Penn State. And there's a lot of people who like their number one complaint about the committee right now is they're over ranking Penn State. And Indiana with a close loss to Ohio State is Penn State. So they
Penn
like
State
that.
has a ranked win that Indiana doesn't have.
Against Illinois. I get that.
Yeah.
So, but that wasn't a ranked win. I mean, it wasn't a ranked, it was still a good win, but it wasn't a ranked win until this week when Illinois scooched in at number 24. So, I do think would you agree with this statement? It matters if Indiana loses, it matters how Indiana loses when it comes to their playoff hopes.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So that's where we are. Anything else you want to say before we start talking about chicken fingers?
No, I think there was a chance that we would be looking at some snow for this game, but I think that'll be out of Columbus by the time kickoff comes. So, hopefully it'll be, which we know we don't mind snow here on Kings of the North, but
no,
would impact what we think of the game. I think
nobody in the South will be able to watch it though. They'll be too scared,
too cold on their televisions,
too cold on their televisions. Have to be sitting on heaters. Do they have heaters in the couches in the South? Like
that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. All right, let's get to what you're watching. What you eating, what you thinking. We do it every Wednesday here on Kings of the North. It allows us to just step back from some ball talk and think about life. And we are at the point, I think like you've kind of expressed this previously, where we sort of live our lives in a way to make sure we have things to talk about, that this subject matter every Wednesday makes us live a fuller, more holistic experience. Because we can't just come on and say, I drank water and I watched ball. That's not a good 15-minute segment.
That would be mostly accurate, though. I mean,
it's what I'm doing right now, but it's not all that I do. So I did go see Conclave, the Pope movie, on Tuesday night. And I went and saw it as you and the other guys in our company were like doing your job and reacting to Ohio State starting center getting injured at practice. And you were like texting me about it. And I was like, I'm at a movie. And I'm sure when I texted that, you were like, oh, because you were working. And I was like, wow, this is some interesting Pope stuff. So one of the reasons I went, though, is because I was thinking, so my like family's getting ready to go out of town and I'm going to be like alone for like 5 days. And I'm like, I'm going to a movie every night while I'm alone. But Wicked opens this weekend. And I was looking to see like, could I go to see Conclave this weekend? And at least at the theater that I go to where I have a refillable popcorn bucket. So it makes me not able to go to any other theater because I don't want to pay $9 for popcorn when I can pay just $5 to refill my bucket. Wicked is blowing everything out of my theater. There's going to be 50 showings a day of Wicked, and Conclave like ain't no room for the Pope. So that movie's been out for a month, and it's my fault that it took me this long to see it. But I literally was like, whatever happens, I have to go see Conclave tonight. So I went and saw it. It was good.
Yeah, it's got good reviews. I want to see it.
Yeah. It was, I did the thing, and I'm terrible at this because you're like, I'm watching a thing and I start to anticipate what I think the thing is going to be. And then you really get invested in like guessing correctly because you can feel something coming. And then if you don't guess it correctly, like you're kind of mad at the movie. Mm-hmm. It's like when you're like, like when, you pick West Virginia to beat Baylor and Baylor wins and it means you get your pick is wrong on Kings of the North and you're like mad about it. So I guessed wrong and it was still interesting, but I was sort of mad at the movie and I have to stop myself from doing that. Do you do that? Do you try to guess what's going to happen in a movie?
No. I mean, sometimes,
okay,
yeah. I mean, from time to time, sure, occasionally, but it's not my default, no.
Okay. Yeah. So don't guess. But just take in all the stuff. Because it's like a episode of Law and Order inside the Vatican, which is kind of cool.
Sold.
There's
I feel like Ralph Fiennes is like an actor who I feel like I've not watched nearly enough of his stuff.
Yes. Because he's the guy who can't be named. So You know who he is to me is the quiz show guy. Did you see Quiz Show?
I have seen it. Yeah, I think I've only
Yeah.
seen it once. Yeah.
That's who I think he is. He's like the Schindler's List guy, and he was like in Grand Budapest Hotel or whatever. But I think he's the Quiz Show guy, and I think
Yeah.
he's like really good in that. So
I think maybe I've only ever seen him like Quiz Show and then like the Harry Potter stuff, but like
yeah,
he's in like a bunch of bangers that I just like I've never seen.
Yeah, and his name's
filmography
not
is pretty
Ralph.
extensive. And his name is not Ralph. His name is
Yeah.
not Ralph. Yeah.
His name is not Ralph. So yeah, I would recommend it if you can find it. And if not, just go see Wicked. I am preparing to sit out the Wicked discourse because it feels like Wicked's going to be like Barbie, right? Or Oppenheimer, or a movie that just takes over. I'm curious if we get a little like the Barbenheimer thing, could we get a little Wickediator?
Yeah.
With Wicked and Gladiator 2 opening at the same time? I think we might be headed for that because my movie theater is like 75% of the screens are Wicked, 20% are Gladiator, and then there's one theater left like for an art house movie, but that's it.
Yeah.
So
I'm
But I
gonna go
don't
see
think I'm gonna-
Gladiator on Friday.
are you going to go see? Do you think you'll see Wicked? I mean, it's not for me. I get it. It's
It's
for
not-
a lot
it's
of
not-
people. It's not for me.
That's not for me. No.
Okay.
I don't mind.
But yeah,
I don't mind a musical, but I don't.
Yeah.
Doesn't appeal to me. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What are you watching?
Did you watch the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight last weekend? Did you have
No.
any interest in it?
I
Like
had
any
zero
intrigue?
interest. Then my
Yeah.
entire Twitter timeline was people waiting for 4 hours for it to start.
Yeah.
And then it almost made me interested, but then I almost on principle was like, no, I am not watching this. And then I did not watch it.
I watched it. I watched the whole thing. The undercard was actually very good. I was shocked by how good the undercard was.
Because it was real boxers, right?
It was real boxers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The two fights prior to the Jake Paul Tyson fight were and I'm not a huge boxing fan, so like people who might like know more about it might say those fights sucked. Like as someone who just likes people pummeling each other, like
Yeah.
they were pretty good. I mostly watched it to see like what a live sport event is going to be like on Netflix
Oh,
and how things go there, and it did not go well. Like there's going to be NFL games on Christmas Day on
Yeah.
Netflix. I'm a wrestling fan. Like Monday Night Raw is moving to Netflix in January.
Oh,
And granted, like I don't think the NFL games and certainly Monday Night Raw are not going to have 60 million people watching it at the same time,
yeah.
like the boxing match had. But like it just wasn't working for like the long stretches of the broadcast. It was just frozen. And I have pretty freaking fast internet at my house, and I was like, even for me, it wasn't working. And it was getting like weird messages about like it wasn't just that it was freezing and pausing and circling or whatever. It was totally leaving the broadcast and like going to a screen that was like a television from Mindhunter that said like Netflix is having issues right now, like try us again later or something like that. Like it was a real disaster for a long time. And it got figured out for me. I was able to watch the Tyson Paul fight basically without interruption, but I don't know that was the case for everybody.
So you were interested. I mean, everybody was interested, but like you were interested. Why?
If it was going to be a real fight, which
Okay.
it clearly wasn't. Like,
Yeah.
and just like to see if Mike still had it, which he doesn't.
Yeah.
Which is like,
But
fine,
you
he's
were
60.
you were more interested in the Mike Tyson part of it than the other guy. What's his name?
I
Jack
don't-
Paul.
Jake Paul. I was interested on like the less than 1% chance that Jake Paul might get knocked out because I would very
Okay.
much like to watch that happen.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like real life celebrity deathmatch, right? That thing on. Did you watch that when you were little on MTV?
Celebrity
the Claymation
Deathmatch is great. Yeah, they should bring it back, but I don't think they can.
No, I would rather watch play celebrities though than real celebrities.
Yeah.
Like if they had Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson and Clay in Claymation, I would watch that because then it would end like it always ended with like someone's head popping off. In
Yeah, I don't
celebrity
know.
deathmatch.
I remember like there was like a heyday for celebrity boxing where it was like, do you want to watch Jose Canseco fight Danny Bonaducci? He's like, no, thanks. I'm good. I don't need to watch
Yeah.
that.
No, I don't want to. Yeah, this is not. I'm very curious, but I'm super curious now if this brings that back, right? Like just famous people. Our producer Mike says Jake Paul got 40 million for that fight, and Mike Tyson got 20 million, and I'm sure it was worth it for what Netflix got out of it. It's just not for me. It's fine. It's fine.
I mean, there were 72,000 people at AT&T Stadium watching that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. Great. I just was, I was more interested in it as like a Netflix experiment of whether it'd be able to handle it. And like you said, somebody probably got fired for that, right? Can you imagine the people who work for Netflix so that thing is buffering its butt off?
And there was a story that I saw today. I can't remember if it was ESPN or the New York Times. Like it was like the NFL had meetings with Netflix. So it was like, because there's going to be two games on Christmas Day on Netflix, and the NFL will want to make sure that people will actually be able to watch those games. So
yeah,
we'll see if it's any better. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what you eating? So I don't think I've talked about this. Did I tell you like the Shake Shack near my house closed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Sad times.
Are there restaurants that you only want to eat on vacation? Because that's what happens to me, that it's like when I eat something cool, then I don't want to eat it in my regular life. And I feel like there are kind of like vacation restaurants that pop up too much everywhere. I don't know. I think maybe I did talk about Shake Shack already. But right, like I want restaurants still to be a treat. As someone who loves chain restaurants, I am worried sometimes about there's too much availability for some of these.
I kind of feel that way about Torchy's Tacos, which are in Columbus now. Like I like when I had to go to Texas for work and go to Torchy's, and it was a real treat. And now it's like I can just get it whenever I want, and I feel like it kind of ruins it.
Yes. So that's a thing. I'm not the only person who feels that.
Yeah. No, I don't. I feel that sometimes. Yeah.
Scarcity matters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say about that. But I kind of wish there were some of these that went back to being more local. So yeah, I mean, like, the Torchy's is like right down the street from me. So, and it's so weird because you went and interviewed Ohio State recruits in Texas, and they'd be like, "Meet me at Torchy's Tacos."
I did,
and now it exists in Ohio, and it's a little mind blowing.
I think I covered an NCAA tournament in Tulsa, and just like went to Torchy's by myself and just like crushed Torchy's. Yeah, and it felt great. And then like I came home, and like 3 months later, I was like, "We're getting Torchy's in Columbus," and now I think there's 2 here.
Okay, so
like it's fine. I still like Torchy's, but yeah, it doesn't. I don't get the same excitement out of having it now that I do when it was like a rarity.
So I feel like my What You Eatin' was not very good. It's because I have a What You Eatin' in the holster, but it requires me to go get props. And when I do it, it's going to be a banger.
Okay. I've seen multiple requests for us to discuss Thanksgiving foods next week when we do What You Eatin'.
I might make my favorite Thanksgiving side and bring it on the show.
Oh.
Do you want to? I don't want to make because mine is very easy to make. So I could do that and it wouldn't be a huge hassle. But if you would like to make something, and then we can eat it and show people what we're going to do.
I'll think about it. I know what I would make. It's just a matter of will I have the time to make it?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, and then like the thing I'm going to do, like it's going to be a hoot when we do it. So it'll get better. I promise. What are you eating?
So a little fact about me is I'm a peppermint fiend. Can't get enough of it. And we're in like peppermint season because for some reason it gets associated with Christmas. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess it's like a candy cane thing.
Candy cane, yeah.
But we have
moved from pumpkin to peppermint. Do you have a line? Like, do you have a circle on your calendar when it moves from pumpkin to peppermint season?
I don't. But I should.
I should. Yeah. Because it's not yet Thanksgiving, but yeah. Okay, peppermint season is here. Great.
Yeah. So we have my favorite candy is a peppermint patty, and that's a candy for all seasons. You don't just have to have that around Christmas time. But since we are in this time of year, we have the peppermint milkshake back at Chick-fil-A, which is just it's a real treat. But also another seasonal ice cream delicacy that shows up around this time of year. Haagen-Dazs makes them. They're peppermint bark ice cream bars. So it's like chocolate and peppermint shell around a vanilla ice cream bar. I crush them.
For real?
We get a big old box of them. They're lucky if they last a week.
Really? Because when we were at Costco the other day, they had like peppermint bark just sitting around, like a 2-pound tub of peppermint bark. And my daughter and I were like, ooh. And my wife was like, we were like, okay, we didn't get it. It's too much peppermint bark. But peppermint bark is great. But to add it to vanilla ice cream, that's a champion move. You're a real king.
Well. Yeah. Do you eat candy canes? I'm a big eating candy cane guy.
Would you hang a candy cane on your tree and then pull it off the tree and eat it?
Always. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, then that's good. But the problem is like now they make like candy canes that taste like Skittles and stuff. So we get like Skittles candy canes. It's like, well, that's not candy cane.
No, I don't want that. Yeah. I just want a candy cane that's peppermint flavored. It's red and white and peppermint flavored. Anything else is they're scamming you.
Yeah. Is your young man in your family going to be walking around licking candy canes this holiday season?
I don't know. Maybe we'll wait till next year. I don't want it's a choking hazard, I guess.
Oh yeah. You could
Yeah.
stab yourself in the eye with that too.
Oh,
Okay.
that too. Yeah.
So partially at the suggestion of my wife, we were thinking about changing the Whatcha part of this. And so instead of what you thinking to what you finding on your kitchen island. Do you have a kitchen island in your home?
Yeah. Yes. And you can't see it. It's covered with so much crap.
So it was my dream. It was my dream to have a kitchen island. And when we were looking at houses, and the house that we bought 20 years ago happened to have a kitchen island, it made me feel like the fanciest lad in all the land. And then it just turns into a place to put your crap. Yeah. And it is like, oh, the dreams of this island. I think a kitchen island, that's what millionaires have. And now it's just right in the middle of your kitchen. It's like stacked to the ceiling. So I decided to write down all the things that we have on our kitchen island right now. Are you ready?
Ready.
A candle, a smoke alarm, a lighter, an old wallet, dried flowers, a lost notebook from a party my daughter had, a camera, a crumble cookie cutter, a Pizza Planet pizza cutter, a broken toaster oven, dog estrogen, a wig, and a bag of blood.
I have questions about the last one.
And that's just how we're living right now on our wonderful kitchen island. It's insane.
Yeah. That's pretty. I don't have a bag of blood on my kitchen island, I don't think.
Yeah.
I am a little jealous of the Pizza Planet pizza cutter, though. That'd be cool to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not in the spot where the pizza cutters do, but it's on the island. It's not real blood, but it is a bag of fake blood.
Oh.
So it makes me feel better. Like, do you think everybody that has a kitchen island has crap all over it?
Yeah, I think so. I never feel more accomplished in my life than like the 2 days a year where there's nothing on the kitchen island because we took the time to clean it off. But it never lasts more than a day or two.
But this is also like, I don't write anymore, but the only time that I would clean off the kitchen island when I was procrastinating on a story. It's like, I have a 2,000 word story that I have to write to put up on the internet by 6 a.m. What time is it? It's 11 p.m. Let's clean off the kitchen island. That's the only time I ever do anything like that, is when I don't want to write. Yeah. So spectacular. All right. You made me feel better about that. What are you thinking about?
Yeah. You're speaking to the world there when you talk about that. I am thinking about, so we've progressed to the point with our soon to be 2-year-old where I'm often doing bedtime, because when I do bedtime, he acts like a functioning member of society. And when my wife does bedtime, he acts like Damien from The Omen. So we just we go up, we get changed, brush teeth, get into PJs, and then we just kind of hang out and rock in the chair up there for a little bit and listen to lullabies as he kind of drifts a little bit, and then I put him down. And I had just been listening to your standard lullabies for a long time, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, stuff like that. And I found this, I guess an art or whatever. It's like an artist profile on Spotify called Sparrow Sleeps that has lullaby versions of the albums that I listened to when I was in high school and college and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So I was a very much a pop punk emo kind of kid when I was growing up in high school and stuff. So we've been listening to Fall Out Boy lullabies and Taking Back Sunday lullabies and Blink 182 lullabies for the last week. And it's awesome because we just rock there and he falls asleep. And in my head, I get to sing songs that I used to sing and still sing now as an adult. So it's been a great time. So I just wanted to shout out to the fine folks at Sparrow Sleeps for making a lullaby playlist that this 35-year-old man very much enjoys.
So then he's going to grow up, and when he's a teenager, he's going to be like, Dad, they have rock versions of my lullaby songs.
Yeah, that's the hope. The hope is to subliminally, as he's falling asleep, get him to start loving the music that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think you could lullaby anything. Could you lullaby DMX or something? You could lullaby anything, right?
Yeah, there's hip hop albums on there for sure.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I wish if we played them on here, YouTube would shut us down. But
probably.
You want to sing one? What could you sing?
No, I'm not going to sing one.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, that's good. That's a good recommendation. You just helped the parents out there. There are people hitting
for real.
Sparrow sings.
Sparrow Sleeps. My brother told me about it, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, my brother told me about it because they have So my niece is like 6 or 7 months old now, so they listen
Yeah.
to it too. But it's cool. There's honestly there's a bunch of stuff. There's like Taylor Swift. There's Weezer. I think there's like Foo Fighters. I think there's like a Tupac one. There's like all kinds of genres.
Nice. Anything can be a lullaby. Who knew?
That's right.
All right. That'll do it for this Wednesday Indiana Ohio State show. We'll be back on Thursday with all of our picks and previews for all the other Northern games. Then we will see you Saturday night for our post-game show. Saturday, 11 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube. We will see you Friday morning for our betting show, me and Tishu, where we did not win our $500 bet last week, but we did hit our plus money parlay swing. So we ended up down for the week, but not that far down, because like the parlay we hit was like a plus 264 or something. It was kind of a nice little parlay that we managed to hit. So hope you try us out in the betting show. For now, thanks to our producer, Mike Yarosowski, for putting all this stuff together, making us look good and sound good. Thanks to you guys for being here. For now, he's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.